Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you had a good break. We are on Class 2, Control, Flow, and Looping, and we are at our final module for this section. And what I decided to do for this module is do a recap by doing some fun challenges. So what I've got is you've learned all the material. Now I'd like to see you put it into practice by completing these challenges. I've got 5 challenges for us, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the challenge, pause the video, try to complete the challenge yourself. I have a solution here, so when you download this Jupyter Notebook or the Jupyter Lab file, you'd be able to look at the source code as well, but I'd like you to attempt it yourself, and we will attempt it as a class together here to try to do our own code. And that way you have the solution if you need it, but at least you can apply and practice some of these things with relatively real-world challenges. So the challenge 1 is odd number finder. So I want you to write a program that you have the user enter a number, and then the program should ignore anything that's an even number and print out to the screen any odd number. And the hint says, hey, let's use the continue statement to skip even numbers. So before you pause, I do want to remind you of one thing, because I didn't really go over this, so I want to teach you how to input a number from a user. So there is an input statement, and it's a method, so it has an open and closed parentheses. And inside there, you can put a prompt to prompt a person for information. So we could say something like, enter a number, and we can say something like, I want to be able to break out of a loop, so we'll say 0 to quit. Let's see, what else do I need? A little colon prompt for them to. So this will get us a variable, or get us the input from the user. We're going to store it in a variable, so I will call this the number from the user, and we'll do the assignment operator with the 1 equal sign. But the one thing I want to teach you about input is it always returns back a string. No matter what they type in, even if they type in a number, it's going to return back a string. So we have to convert it to a string. And this term is called casting. So I'm going to use the word int, and I'm going to put a parenthesis at the beginning of this thing, and then I want to encapsulate the entire input method call into this input int method call. So now the user is going to input a string, but hopefully they input a number, and that number gets converted to an integer, and that integer is stored into number. So with that, go ahead and make your loop where you're having the user input numbers, and when they put 0, it'll break out of the loop. So we might need a break statement, hint on that as well. And then if the number, we're going to do a comparison to see if it's equal to an even number. So you got to look back and remember through our bag of tricks to see how do you find if a number is even. Maybe if you go back to our day 1 and look at how we did the modulus operator, which was up here. So the modulus operator is another hint. All right, with that, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can create this loop that only prints out odd numbers. Okay, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and create a solution for this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loop. Since we don't know how many times we want to loop through, which kind of loop is the best style of loop to use? Hopefully you said while loop, and you are correct if you did. So we're going to create an infinite while loop. We're going to create use the keyword while, use the reserved keyword true, and then we put a colon. And then we got to create a code block. So I'm going to indent number by 4 spaces. So I'm going to request the number from the user inside our infinite while loop. Now the first thing I want to do is check if the number they entered is equal to 0, because that is our quitting number to use to quit, right? So we're going to do if statement, then we do our Boolean expression that we're checking for, then we do a colon, then we're going to do our next code block. So we're going to indent 4 more spaces, and if this is the case, I want to break out. And remember, the break says find the while loop and go outside of the while loop. So the while loop is not indented at all, so breaking outside the while loop puts me at no indentation at all. So we can say print done. Okay, so let's get back into our while loop. So it's indented at 4 spaces. So let's get, oops. So now we're part of this while loop again. And I got to do another check. I want to check now to see if the number is even or odd. So I can do an if statement there. And the idea here is you want to say, is it even? Right? How do I check to see if something is even? I gave you a hint that we could use the modulus operator. So I could say is number modulus 2, and is that remainder equal to 0? If that remainder is equal to 0, so if the whatever number they put in divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 0, that makes it an even number. So one thing I could do is I could say the not word up here, not, and I could put parentheses around this statement. And what that'll do is say, hey, if the number is not divisible or does not have a remainder of 0, that makes it an odd number. So now I can print that number. I don't want to print the number. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this out a little bit. Go ahead and hit run. Let's enter a number. I don't know, we'll say 5. 5 is an odd number, so it gets printed out. We'll say 4. 4 is even, so it doesn't get printed out. 7 is odd. 8. You can try big numbers, 55. I don't know, we'll say 78. And so 78 is even, so it does not get printed out. So it looks like our program is working. Let's see if it exits out gracefully with a 0. And it does. So that's the solution. There's another way to do it with using continue statements. I could remove this not. Now I can have that parentheses. And instead of print the number, if it is even, I can just continue. Remember, continue jumps straight back to the beginning of the while loop and re-executes from the top. So it doesn't do anything below. So if I don't hit this as a true statement, I will execute this next line of code, where I can just print the number. So this solution works as well. We can go ahead and test it again, and we'll just say, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, 99, 98. There we go. So works just the same. Different ways to do the exact same thing. So that is challenge 1. And if you have the module, you have the notebook file, you can see that there's the answer there. And I also put some comments just so we kind of understand what's going on in our code. This is a reminder for that if we get to this point, we're exiting out of our entire loop statement. This tells the people that are visiting what it's doing here. It's like, hey, skipping even numbers. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and print the number. So if we were able to find that challenge challenging, yet able to accomplish it. All right, challenge number 2 says it's a name search. So I want to create a program that asks the users to enter a list of names separated, let's say, by a space. And we'll fix that typo. So separated by a space. I want to iterate through the names, and if the name Alice is found, we're going to say, hey, Alice found. And then we'll exit the loop using the break statement. If the loop continues without finding Alice, go ahead and print Alice not found. So what we're going to do now is we know we have a defined list of names, so it's a finite list, and it's a set number. So now maybe we want to look at using a for loop. And then what do we pair with a for loop if we iterate over the entire loop and it completes the loop without a break statement? How do we print something at the end of it, such as Alice not found? So that hint is we can pair an else statement with a loop. And if you do that, when the loop completes, if it didn't break out of the loop, then it will print whatever you put in the else block of code. All right, so go ahead and pause the video. Oh, actually, let me show you how to create a list of names before that. Just like I showed you how the line of code for inputting integers, let's go ahead and do the same kind of concept, but show you how to create a list of users. So let's do another input, and we'll ask them for names. Type a list of names separated by a space. So this will give us one long string of a bunch of names with spaces in it. There's a method that we can append to this called split. And we'll learn about this later, but I wanted to show you now what it does is it's going to create a list of names. So let's create a variable called names. And if I do this, let's go ahead and print out names, just so you can see how this idea works. So let's just do, I don't know, Bob, Frank, Sammy, and Alice. When I use this split, you'll see how it splits the names into 4 different names. So now I can use a for loop and go name by name and do comparisons. All right, so now you have enough tools in your tool belt to go ahead and try to do this challenge. So go ahead and pause the video and try to complete this challenge. Okay, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and create our for loop. I'll leave that print statement there. Let's go ahead and create our for loop. So the syntax is for, then some variable that we come up with. We'll call it name, singular. And we'll say it's in our list of names called names, and that's plural. So this variable is defined up here, and that's our list of names. This variable is a name that we're going to use inside our for loop block of code. So our block of code is indented 4 spaces. Now we can do a check. If name dot, and there's another thing I'll teach you called title. If they type in Bob with a capital B, that works great. What if they typed it lowercase b? I'm going to do my comparisons with being case sensitive, because Python is case sensitive. So what title case does, no matter what they typed in, it'll capitalize the first letter and lowercase all the rest of the letters. So let me comment out our code here just to show you what that looks like. Actually, we'll leave this and I'll just print the names. That's what we'll do with title case. And we'll go ahead and run this. So we'll do Bob, Alice, Frank, and Sammy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and you'll see the list has it stored the way I typed them, right? Capital weird for Alice, lowercase for Sammy. But when I print out the title case here in the loop, you'll see how it fixed everybody's name to be capital first letter, lowercase for the rest. So if I do that in my loop, I can actually do a comparison now against cleaner input. So we're going to say if name title is checking equality, so we're going to use 2 equal signs. I'm going to say Alice. Then what I want to do is I want to break out after I print Alice is found. So we're going to say print Alice is found. I think that was what the, yep, it's set up here. Alice is found. So we got that. And since this break is part of the same indentation, so the same block of code, it's part of this if statement, not part of the for loop. Let's enter one more time. And then what we'll do is, let's just go ahead and print the name. And the last thing it says, I want to say print Alice not found if I get through my entire list of names and didn't find Alice. So we're going to do this else statement, and we'll say print Alice not found in my list. And then at the end, we'll print the word done. All right, so let's kind of recap what this code is doing. The first thing it's doing is it's asking for the user to give us a list of names separated by spaces. And we print that out, and you'll see that because we use the split method, that it's going to give it to us as a list. You see here it's got a square bracket to start with, square bracket to end. That indicates that Python knows that this is a list. And then each name is a separate item in our list. So now we're going to loop over each person's name in that list one at a time. And that's going to be stored in the name variable. Now to clean up the code the way the person types the name, we're going to convert it to what we call title case, meaning the first letter is capitalized, the rest of it's lowercase. So I say, hey, is the name in title case equal to Alice? If it is, I print out my Alice is found, and then I hit break. Break looks up the chain and says, which loop am I associated with? It looks up the chain, finds this for loop. It says, okay, if I'm breaking out of this for loop, I'm going to go to the first line of code that's not associated with this for loop. That is the word done. Because this else is associated with the for loop, it skips this else statement and goes straight to the done keyword here. So that's what the break does. It takes it, looks up the chain, finds which loop it's associated with, breaks it down just past that loop, and will print the word done. Now, if I get through all the names, and none of them are Alice, the next line of code for this for does call this else statement, and it goes ahead and prints Alice not found. All right, we're going to go ahead and test that real quick. We'll do our Bob. Actually, I think, can I just up arrow? I think I can. Look at that. We're going to use our up arrow to redo the same input we had earlier. And we see it types in Bob, then it says, hey, Alice is found, and then I'm done. I run it again. Let's up arrow, but let's remove Alice. And we'll add somebody else in here. We'll add John, for sure, for fun. Oops, could not execute. I meant to hit enter. There you go. So it's got Bob, Frank, Sammy, John, goes through them one by one. None of those are Alice, so it prints Alice not found, and then completes the loop, or completes the program. All right, so that's challenge number 2. Hopefully you found that fun and now understand it a little better. Let's move on to challenge number 3. This is the password checker. We're going to write a program that asks the user to enter a password, make the variable with the password of secret. So in other words, we're going to say password is equal to secret. I'm going to put that in our, just hit Control C. I'll put that there. So that's my variable secret. That's our password. So I'm going to ask the user to input a password, and I'm going to keep asking the user until they enter the correct password. Use the pass statement to create an empty code block in the loop. So the next thing we do is we have to use our pass statement, which is the no operation. So if you recall back in module, which one was that? It was module, I think it was in this module. So the last module, we talked about using the pass statement, which is a no operation. So we got to create a loop, and if they get it wrong, I want to just continue the loop, and I'm going to use this word pass statement. So we're going to create an infinite loop, because we're going to use a while loop, since we don't know how many times they're going to put in a password. So the type of loop we're going to use is called a while loop, and we're going to make it infinite. So capital TRUE gives us our reserved keyword. Now I'm in my while loop code. Let's ask the user for their password. We'll say enter password. Okay, and then we need to store that in a variable. We'll call that user pass. Okay, so now I've got the user's password. I'm going to do a check to see if user underscore pass is equal to, so I'm going to use not the assignment operator, I'm going to use the double equals, and I'm going to say is equal to the password that we used up here. I'm going to fix my spacing there. And if that's the case, we're going to print out you got it. And then I'm going to go ahead, oops, I'll fix that. And I'm going to hit break. So I break out of my infinite loop. So we're going to come down here and print our done marker, just so we know when we're done. Okay, we're going to indent 4 spaces, so I'm, oops, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm part of the while loop again. I'm going to have an else statement. So if they got the password correct, I print you got it, then I break, else I want to print, actually I want to just do a pass statement here. So I don't know what I want to do yet, so I'm just going to hit pass. And then I'm going to put print you did not get the right answer. Something like that. But I'm using my pass statement in my else block, so it'll first check this. If it's true, I will print it out and break. Otherwise, I'm going to do a no operation. Then I'm going to complete my loop by printing out you didn't get the right answer, go back to the top, ask them for another input. Go ahead and run this. All right, we'll say, is it password? Is it password 123? Is it admin? Or is it secret? Hey, we got it. So there you go. That is challenge number 3. Hope you found that rewarding. And here's my answer key. You'll notice I also commented up, and I didn't add the break statement, or I didn't do the done statement, but this is the more concise answer. This is kind of fleshed out a little bit. All right, challenge number 4. Let's do a grade calculator. We're going to write a program that asks the users to enter a score between 0 and 100. So how well do they do on the exam? The program should then print the corresponding letter grade based on the following grading scale. If you're an A student, you got to get a 90 or above. A B student gets anywhere in the 80s. C is anywhere in the 70s. D is anywhere in the 60s. And then below 60s is an F. So first thing we have to do is have the teacher enter our score. So we're going to do, so remember back at the first example we did, challenge 1, we had to convert the input from the input statement into a string. So let's go ahead and do input, have the teacher enter the grade, right? And then I want to convert that to an integer. So I'm going to do int and then parentheses around the whole thing. So I'm passing the entire input function into my int function. So that's why I got to wrap the whole thing in parentheses. And now I'm going to assign it to a variable. We're going to say grade is equal to this input statement. All right, with that, that should be enough if you can remember how to do our if, else if, which is elif in Python. If you remember how to do those elif statements, you should be able to do this, or yeah, I guess that's the best way to do it, is elif statements. And you've also got to remember back to day 1 where we did our comparison operators. Where did I do those? Or a little further down, I think we did them. I gotta remember where we did those. There's the and statements. Ah, yeah, here we go. So the less than or equal to, greater than. So we've got to go back to our comparison operators from day 1, and we've got to go back to our, where's our elif statements? Here's our case statements. Ah, here's our elif. So you got to go back and look at how we did this if, else statements. Now go ahead and pause the video and see if you can flesh this block of code out and complete this challenge. All right, so welcome back. Since it's just a one-time thing, we don't need to do this as a loop, so we're just going to do our if statement. We're going to say if the grade is greater than or equal to 90, I'm going to go ahead and print you got an A. Then I'm going to say elif grade is greater than or equal to 80, and grade is less than 90. Then I want to print B. And so I've kind of got the model here, so I can copy this elif statement. And I can say, okay, instead of 80, I want to say 70. Instead of 90, I want to say 80. And then I'm going to say that's the C. We'll do the same thing for D, which is between 60 and 69. So, and that gives us the grade letter of D. And then the last one is going to be our else statement. If it's not any of those other things, then therefore it must be an F. Okay, so now at the end, that should be printing out everything that we intended it to print out. We're going to clean this up in a second. Enter a grade. Let's say they got a 75. That is a C. What if they got 79? That's still a C. What if they got an 80? There we go. So we're testing the boundary conditions. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is this makes intuitive sense, and this is how I would probably write up my if-elif statements, because you can see it, it's very explicit, right? If they got greater than a 90, they get an A, greater than or equal to a 90. If they get a B, you have to be greater than or equal to 80 and less than 90. But I don't really need this section of code, because as soon as something above it equates to true, it'll print that and then drop below the whole thing, right? So it'll come down here and print so all these extra statements I really don't need, because as soon as they get a grade of the highest letter, they're going to get that grade and then print done. But I like to leave those in for clarity, right? So that way I understand exactly what it requires to get a B, but it's not necessarily required. In fact, if I look at my my solution that I put in there, I left those out for posterity, but I would tend to leave those in my actual code just to make my code a little bit more readable. And so we learned if statements here. We also learned about operators where we use the and, or, and not, which we called those logical operators, if you go back to our notes. So we got a little bit more functionality. And the last challenge for this evening is challenge number 5, ticket pricing. We're going to create a program that prompts the user to enter their age. Based on the age, the program should determine and print the ticket price for a movie theater according to the following conditions. Children are aged 0 to 12. Oops, I have to fix that. That's a dollar sign, not a, we'll just say $5. That's $7. I tried to URL encode it, but I guess it didn't. Or HTML encode it, sorry. It didn't seem to like that. We'll just leave them without dollar signs. Okay, so children from 0 to 12 are $5, age 13 to 17 are $7, and then above 18 have to pay the full price of $10. So in order to do that, we got to do that same concept where we're going to ask them to enter their age. So we're going to do an input statement. And ask them to enter your age. But I need to convert that to a number, so I'm going to wrap that whole thing in our int statement from the beginning all the way to the end. And then I'm going to assign that a variable of age. And I use the single equal sign as the assignment operator. Now I've got to create that if-elif block. So let's go ahead and do an if-elif block. We're going to say if age is less than or equal to 12, right? That's going to be our first condition. I'm going to put my spaces there, make it a little prettier. Print ticket price is $5. Then I want to do the middle condition, which is a single elif. Age is greater than or equal to 13, and age is less than 18. If that's the case, then I want to say the ticket price is $7. Else, you have to pay full price. Okay, we'll go ahead and try that out for us. We're going to say we are 10 years old. Hey, it's only cost us $10. Let's say I am 15 years old. We are 7, and then say I am, we'll say I am at 18 years old. Oops, I didn't have, oops, I did price, that's what I did wrong. Let's do print. Ah, that's funny. All right, we'll put back to 18 and see that we got that right. Okay, cool. Typos, you gotta fix those typos. All right, so this is the example. Now what I'd like you to do, now that you have this example, see if you can make it into a loop where you just keep asking over and over and over their age until they enter 0. 0 would cause it to exit. The other thing you can do is see if you can modify it so that this is the number 17, but still has the exact same logic. So what can you add to the statement here to make it ticket price from 13 to 17, still costs $7, but you can't use the number 18 here. All right, with that, I will see you for day 3. Hopefully you enjoyed those challenges. Now you start to see how we're building on everything and starting to really learn how to program here and can make some useful stuff. Our next class, day 3, we're going to start getting into data structures. How do we store data? And I've given you some sneak peeks. We've looked at lists, we've looked at dictionaries for a little bit, but we're going to get into much more detail on those coming up next. So looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and happy coding.